Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the December 12th, 2023 City of Apopka Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. If you would please stand with me for a moment of silent prayer and the pledge. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. We have public comment for each item on the agenda this evening, and during the discussion and the voting on that particular item, there will be a time for members of the public to speak if they wish. If you have something that is not related to an item that you'd like to speak with, now would be the time. Seeing none, we'll move on. All right. Approval of meeting minutes from October 10th, 2023. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Ryan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Mott. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. First item this evening will be ordinance number 3033, first reading, change of zoning, 100 Herman Smith Road.
Good evening, this is June Zone Planner 2. The item is rezoning application for the property located at 100 Herman Smith Road. The applicant requested rezoning of the property from PD, Planned Development, to IL, Light Industrial for the outdoor storage business. The total size of the property is 4.15 acres. The future land use is industrial and its surrounding areas are also industrial. The current zoning is PD and its surrounding zoning is PD, light industrial, transitional, and residential single family 1A. The DRC has recommended approval and the recommended motion is approval of the rezoning from PD to light industrial. The applicant and staff member are here to respond to any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions of staff?
Yeah.
Commissioner Ryan?
Yeah. Herman Smith Road, that's a city road, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how far down does it go? How far south?
It goes down, I believe, around the terminus of the entrance to the property. It just goes a
Just to
little
the
further
end?
south.
It doesn't go into the property?
No, sir. That's where it
Because
kind of
it's
begins to be
confusing
private.
because on the map, it looks like,
Yeah, and sometimes the maps show that, whether it be a right-of-way that goes into a property, and that would mean that it's a private part of there.
yeah, I was going to say, because it's in poor shape too, but
Yeah.
it's not a city concern then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Is the applicant here and do they have a presentation?
Good evening, Tara Tedder, Lowndes Law, 215 North Eola Drive, Orlando, Florida. Probably the one time I don't have a presentation. This one's pretty straightforward of taking an industrial PD back to a straight zoning designation. Happy to answer any questions that you all might have, and we concur with staff's recommendation for approval.
Great, thank you. Anyone have questions of the applicant?
No, sir.
No? Welcome back, Ms.
Yes,
Tidrow.
welcome back.
Does anyone from the public here wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the findings proposed change of zoning from PD Plan Development to IL Light Industrial, consistent with the Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code and compatible with the character of the surrounding areas. Recommend approval of the proposed change of zoning based on the findings and facts presented in the staff report and exhibits.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Stanley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Washington. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2, 1700 West Keene Road, small-scale future land use amendment. Owners, ML Carter Services, Inc., trustee of Carter King Road Land Trust. Applicant, Brian Potts, P.E., location 1700 West Keene Road. Mr. Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bobby Howe, Planning Manager. This is a small-scale future land use amendment request from a comprehensive plan change from office to commercial for property located at 1700 West Keene Road. It's approximately 18.8 acres in size. As you can see on the map there, shows the existing office future land use and existing office zoning designation. The applicant's requesting the rezone or the future land use amendment to allow for the potential development of retail, medical office, and fast food restaurant uses on the parcel, of which is not permitted under the current future land use and zoning designations. The Development Review Committee recommended approval, and the recommended motion this evening is approval. If you have any questions, staff and the applicant are available.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Any questions of staff?
I do.
Commissioner Washington.
Of course, this project is adjacent to, or across the street from the Publix development. So that little section on Keene Road, both projects will be sharing that. Would it be an entrance or a exit from this project onto Keene Road?
No, sir. It would only be on Apopka Road.
Okay, that's good.
Commissioner Ryan.
On the November 14th agenda, which was, I guess, tabled, the land use calculations that and proposed was 12.25 acres, which is 818,928 square feet. Now, the one for today says the proposed use is 0.25 times 18.8 acres, which is the same calculation of 18,920 square feet. Which one is correct? I assume the second one is correct and the first one was in error?
No, this is the correct one. When we were coming forward on November 14th, the applicant originally requested a change to mixed use, which allows a floor area ratio of 1. This future land use designation allows a floor area ratio maximum of 0.25. So the current under office allows 0.3 maximum FAR, 30% of the site. The proposed is allowing 0.25 or a quarter of the site. So a maximum amount of building area could be 204,732 square feet.
Okay, so they only plan to use a quarter of the site.
That's the maximum they could use. Yes, sir.
Maximum.
Yeah.
Is that because of the wetlands?
No, it's per the comprehensive plan. The commercial future land use category caps out the floor area ratio of 0.25.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you showed like 5 or 6 maps on your,
Mhm.
and nothing was about the wetlands. I mean, there's a substantial amount of wetlands on that
Correct.
piece of property.
Yeah, and they can't build within the wetlands upon development per the comprehensive plan and the water management district. They have to maintain a minimum of a 15-foot, maximum of 25-foot average buffer, upland buffer from the wetland.
So
it
there's
can-
been no wetland mitigations on this property?
No, there will be no development in the wetlands.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I got a question, Mr. Chairman. So
Commissioner Dumey.
follow up, Mr. Howell, back to your response earlier. So there would be no entrance to this parcel if you're going westbound on Keene Road.
No, sir. Mm-mm.
I think that's a bad plan. Because if you're putting a grocery store in there and you're going westbound on Keene Road, you're either going to go right into the Publix, but you're not going to be able to go left without turning at the light and then turning another 2 lefts instead of just 1.
Right. Well, it's my understanding the applicant's here and he can come up and address this, but there's not a grocery store plan for this parcel. It's actually going to be commercial medical offices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
The,
yeah.
the grocery store is to the north.
But that still would hold with even, you said fast food, correct?
Correct.
Would be on this parcel. So it's going to kind of have to go round. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense from the engineering standpoint.
Well, keep in mind tonight, we're just considering the future land use change.
Right.
That would all come at the site development plan. However, the applicant's here and he can come up and talk about access and stuff onto Keene. I believe you've been working with Orange County on that. So if you want to come up and talk about that.
Any more questions of staff?
No, sir.
Doug Potts, 1263 Castlevecchia Loop, Orlando, Florida. I'm here to answer any questions.
All right, any questions of the applicant? Mr. Toomey?
Well, just my question. I guess it would follow through the previous question. Is that a smart move? I mean, I know we're not doing the engineering review at this point, but is that a smart move to go westbound on Keene? You're not going to be able to turn left into your property from that. based
There's a
on
lot
this.
of grading constraints coming down under our site. Our site's in a
Right, yeah.
hole compared to Keene Road up at where we could tie on far enough from the intersection. So the getting an ADA sidewalk and regrade down to our site for the driveway, it was a big challenge. So our clients decided it'd be better just to have two entrances off of Apopka Coe Road instead of the one off of Keene.
Okay.
Mr. Mott?
Looking at the map, is there not an entrance to the public property on the north on Keene? There's an entrance exit there, and then there's an entrance exit off of Apopka, correct? Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Bob? Yeah. Is your property not extend far enough to where that?
It does not extend
Okay,
over far
okay.
enough.
All right.
The entrance is
That's-
north of the,
I wasn't
Orange
quite
County
sure, but
Springfield.
it kind of almost looked like that on the map.
just a little bit short.
Yeah, okay. One last question. The two entrance exits onto Apopka, are you going to try and line at least one of those up with one of the entrance
Yes.
exits? Okay.
Yes.
Any more questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is anyone from the public here wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a discussion and a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to find the proposed change in future land use designation from office to commercial compatible with the character of the surrounding areas, recommending approval of the future land use amendment, subject to the findings and facts presented in the staff report and exhibits.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Washington. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Ryan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item number 3, same property, 1700 West Keene Road, rezoning. Owners ML Carter Services, trustees of Carter Keene Land Trust, applicants Brian Potts, P.E. Mr. Howe.
Thank you. This is the companion rezoning of the property that you just considered. It's 18.8 acres. The rezoning request is from office to community commercial to facilitate the development of a commercial facility consisting of retail, medical office, and fast food restaurants. The Development Review Committee recommends approval, and the recommended motion this evening is approval. Staff and the applicant are available.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Anyone have questions of staff? I don't believe it is. Okay. This wouldn't be considered quasi judicial, correct?
Rezonings are typically considered quasi-judicial when they're small scale in nature.
Okay,
In
so,
this case, this would be. That being said, there is we'll be taking a look, there are some portions of the Apopka code that address hearings, and so we'll be taking a look at that, but yes.
so until that changes, we should now treat these as, anything that's a small scale rezoning should be treated as quasi judicial by us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That being said, has anyone here had ex parte communication on this matter?
No.
Okay. All right. Where was I? Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Anyone have questions of the applicant again? No, sir. No, okay. Bring it back to the board for discussion and a vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to find the proposed change of zoning from O office to CC community commercial consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development code and compatible with the character of the surrounding areas recommending approval of the proposed change of zoning based on the facts and findings presented by staff report and exhibits.
Thank you, sir. Motion by Commissioner Mott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Stanley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Right. Item number 4, 1240 Usler Road, small-scale future land use amendment. Owners Mark Gilliam and Camotip Racing. Applicant Andrew Hamilton. Location 1240 Usler Road.
Good evening, everyone. Amir Hamza, Planner 1. So this is a small-scale future land use amendment located at 1240 Oslo Road. It is just east of just south of East Welch Road and east of North south of East Welch Road and east of North Rock Springs Road. And as you can see, the total acreage of the site is 5.07 acres. And applicant wants to request a future land use amendment to allow for a development of a proposed single-family residence with detached garage on the parcel, of which parcel has no current future land use and zoning designations at the moment. So it's currently in progress. Wants to have a future land use of residential, low-density suburban. And this is a current future land use map. As you can see, all those other areas are, low suburban and has a zone. And the zoning, as you can see, there's a RCE beside it and all the surrounding areas, so it matches with the area. And Development Review Committee recommends approval of the change, and recommended motion finds a proposed change in future land use designation from in progress to residential very low suburban compatible with the surrounding areas. And the applicant is here.
Hold on one second, sir. Does anyone have questions of staff? Commissioner Ryan.
What's the width of this parcel?
The width, I would have to look in my notes, but from what I remember, that the width meets our residential low suburban, the future land use along with the zoning, so it meets the minimum width requirements
And then
for the
what
zoning.
would be the number of houses they can build?
The max would have to be 5 dwelling units an acre, but at this moment,
Actually, sorry, to interrupt, it's within the Wekiva, so the maximum they can do per the comprehensive plan is 2 units an acre. Yes.
But is it feasible with that lot being so narrow to do that? I mean, with the setbacks? Of course, I don't know what the width is, maybe the applicant knows the width.
yeah.
Yeah, if the applicant wants to come up to the microphone, we can get things on the record.
Hang on one second.
Right now, the existing future land use is transition.
Correct. It was annexed into the city of Apopka, so that's why it's a transitional. So the zoning will go from transitional to RCE.
Actually, the future land use is in progress. Transitional is the zoning
Zoning,
designation.
yeah.
So
Future
right-
land use is in progress.
Yeah, so right now we're considering the future land use,
Yeah.
so,
Okay,
yeah.
I understand.
Yeah,
I was just curious about why you say in progress.
It was annexed in at some point in time and never given a future land use designation. So they just called it in progress. We have several properties like that in the city, which honestly really shouldn't have been done, but it was. So we're here to clean this up a little bit.
All right. Any more questions of staff? Thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right, the applicant.
Hello, Andrew Hamilton, Canvas, 3700 Grant Boulevard, Orlando, Florida. I think the question before was brought up to the width. It's 135 feet wide, and I'm here for any other questions.
Yeah, okay.
All right, Commissioner Ryan.
Yeah, it's so long, it looked like it was much less width than that. Okay, but I mean, I don't see I don't see a problem with two houses on that, in my opinion.
I have a question.
Commissioner Washington.
How deep is the property for each house?
Sorry,
It's 135 feet wide.
total width, correct?
Total? For the entire piece of property we're talking about?
I think he's
Correct.
asking the length of the entire property.
The depth of the property is what he's asking.
Oh, the total depth, 1,600 feet.
That's the depth. And the length is how much? 1,600 feet. Is the width.
1,600 feet by 135.
That's what happened. Good, thank you.
Any more questions of the applicant?
Yeah, question.
Commissioner Mott?
And you said that you're planning on putting
Or
a
excuse me,
garage.
do me, I'm sorry. What was- I just called you Mott.
You're planning on putting a garage on the property? House and a garage, or are you gonna develop this?
Yeah, the current intent is to have a single-story residence that has a detached garage with the ability to build a future residence on the property as well.
Any more questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone from the public here wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to find a proposed change in future land use designation from in progress to residential, very low suburban, compatible with the character of the surrounding areas. Recommending approval of the future land use amendment, subject to the findings and facts presented in the staff report and exhibits.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Stanley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Dumey. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Same piece of property, item number 5, 1240 Usler Road, rezoning. Has anyone here had ex parte communication on this matter?
No, sir.
Seeing none, the owners would be Mark Gilliam, Camel Tip Narasing, applicant Andrew Hamilton, location 1240 Usler Road.
Hi, so going back to the same property, so as mentioned, just like the future land use change, this also needs zoning as the property was annexed into the city of Apopka, so currently it has a transitional, and the recommended approval change of zoning is to residential country estate. And as mentioned, this is the property on Usler Road, just east of Rock Springs and south of Welch. And here's the zoning map, as I explained before. It matches with the surrounding other properties in the surrounding areas. And Development Review Committee recommends approval of the change, and a recommended motion finds a proposed change compatible with the character of the surrounding areas.
Thank you. Anyone have questions of staff? All right. Anyone have questions of the applicant? All right. Does anyone from the public here wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll create the motion. Good? Okay. I make a motion to find the proposed change and change the zoning from T transitional to RC residential country estate compatible with the character of the surrounding areas, recommending approval of the future land use amendment subject to the findings and facts presented in the staff report and exhibits.
Thank you, sir. Motion by Commissioner Dumey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Washington. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Site plan. B climbing major development plan. Owners B Climbing Inc., applicants RCE Consultants LLC, care Larry Boiler, PE, location northeast corner of State Road 414 and Claricona Road. Ms. Sanchez, you've got my.
Don't insult her like that. The applicant is requesting approval of a major development plan for a 30,000 square foot indoor rock climbing facility located at the northeast corner of State Road 414 and Clarkona Corey Road. Property 7.02 acres in size. You see the future land use and zoning show the property as a commercial zoning and a future land use commercial. The site will be accessed via a left turn, full access point leading into the site from Clarkona Road. Left turn lane will be constructed leading into the site at the access point. An alternative parking plan was approved pursuant to Land Development Code Section 5.1.8A to allow a total of 143 parking spaces for the use, in lieu of the code required 180 spaces. 5 of those spaces are accessible parking spaces. Stormwater is proposed to be discharged into a pond located on the eastern portion of the site. Development Review Committee recommends approval, and the recommended motion this evening is recommend approval of the major development plan for bee climbing. Myself and the applicant are available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Anyone have questions of staff? Commissioner Ryan?
Yeah, just one. Is this, are these right turn only for the entrance and exit?
Hold on. It's a full access point,
I'm sorry?
full access.
Full access, okay.
In and out.
Yeah, I understand. All right, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Thank you. Is the applicant here and do they have a presentation?
Larry Polliner, RCE Consultants, 617 Arvern Drive, Altamont Springs. If you have any questions, I'm here at your pleasure.
Anyone have questions of the applicant?
No, I just have a comment. Yeah, we talked to you 2 years ago about this project. I wonder what happened to it. So now you're back.
We're back. It's ready to go.
All right.
I have a comment, sir.
All right, Commissioner Dumey.
Good luck. This is a great opportunity for our residents to have some entertainment options around here. I think this is a good add to the city. So that's my comment.
All right. Thank you, sir. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a discussion and a motion.
Commissioners, I have just one thing on here because I don't see it in the recommended motion. If it is the commission to recommend approval, I just recommend that you include a finding that this plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the motion when it's made. That's all I have.
Bobby, can you scroll that up
I
to
didn't
here?
understand.
What I was saying, sir, is you have a recommended motion here. If it is the commission's desire to follow that motion, I would just recommend including a finding that the proposed plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city.
Okay, I can create the motion, Chairman.
Okay.
Create a motion to recommend approval of the bee climbing major development plan, subject to the findings in the staff report, and that it is consistent with the major development plan of the city,
Comprehensive plan.
comprehensive plan of the city.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Dumey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Mott. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Old business. Anyone have old business? Did you want to ask a question on the presentation from last week?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Commissioner Ryan.
So we're just supposed to consider facts. We're supposed to only consider the facts. In other words, we're not supposed to consider rumors, hearsays, or hypotheticals.
That's correct if you are in a quasi-judicial hearing where you're considering competent substantial evidence. The board has more leeway when it's in a legislative hearing.
So they can consider rumors, hearsays, and hypotheticals.
The requirement that the facts, competent substantial evidence, be considered is intrinsic to things like rezonings and that sort of a thing. When we're talking about amendments to the future land use map, comprehensive plan amendments, then the board has, like I said, a lot greater leeway of what to take into account when making determinations.
Well, and the reason I'm asking this is we have developers that come in here and there's so much say, this is not the best, I understand it's not the best development for this parcel, but it could be worse, it could be affordable housing. To me, that's not a fact, that's either a rumor, or that's hearsay, or a hypothetical. So is that something we should consider?
As far as what else it could be, I mean, I think the idea is when an application comes in, the idea is to consider the application, of course, on its face and what the application is for, as opposed to whatever else it might actually be. So I think that's more of a comment than a fact, something substantiated, but it's not offered to prove anything. So it's just a comment, I think, that's just advancing the narrative, if that helps.
Well, I know, is it something we should take in consideration, or should we disregard a comment like that?
Well, I think the idea is when an applicant comes in and, let's say it's a rezoning, it is incumbent upon them to present facts that support the criteria that would allow for the rezoning. And so what it may be or what other use, it could be is not a fact intrinsic to those criteria. And so the facts that, are linked to those criteria are what to consider. And it is that applicant's burden to prove that those facts are met. Once the applicant has done that or offered evidence towards, that list of criteria, if the city wants to, if it was the board's leisure to deny recommendation of approval, then it becomes incumbent upon the board to articulate a reason for doing so, just as it would be, if it was before the city council.
Oh, no, yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I just, the question is a non-fact consideration in making the decision, or should we just disregard it, or?
The best way I can answer that question, really, I mean, you're allowed to hear everything. You still take public comment, and oftentimes public comment really shouldn't be considered. So at the end of the day, I mean, you can listen to that comment, but as far as, what your decision is, if it doesn't tend to prove something that's within the criteria, then it really isn't particularly relevant. It may be relevant to understanding where the developer is coming from, what sort of a project they're envisioning. It may be useful information to you, but if it is not linked to the criteria, then no, it's not something for consideration.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Very welcome.
Well, I would, and along those lines, we're all going to make our decision based on what we think about it. And I think I understand what you're getting at is that they're throwing something out there in a comment that's not factual. So we do have the ability, they threw it out so everybody heard it, it's on the record. Well, then you have the ability, and you've done it before, to say, well, wait a minute, that's conjecture, that's not factual. That is a potential that could happen, but that's not what we're discussing here. So you could refute that and put that on the record, so, you know what I'm saying? They're allowed to say whatever they want, and we're allowed to ask a question about what they say or comment on what they say. So I think that's the way you would, if they threw something out there that was off the hook like that, you could just call them out.
Right, and I agree with you 100%, but my question is, should we be allowed to consider non-factual statements to make our decision, basically? They can say whatever they want to say, but if I say, well, gee, I'm afraid of that affordable housing coming in there, I'm going to have to vote for him because I'm afraid of that non-factual threat. Well, I call it a threat. Now, a lot of people don't call it a threat, but for lack of a better word, I call it a threat. Leverage, okay, leverage.
Leverage.
I will be politically correct here, okay.
I think that's our role is to look at that and make our decision based on what we actually believe and what like he had alluded to, the facts that have been put in front of us, not what could potentially happen, or this is the lesser of the evils. Well, is it? I think we all have to individually make up that, but I would say in a case like that, then call them out on it.
No, I plan to, thank you.
Yeah, I know you're not shy about that. All
I
right,
have
go ahead, Mr.
Sir.
Washington.
Building on that, not too long ago, we approved a project, apartment buildings at the intersection of Plymouth Center Road.
That's what he's talking about.
Okay, and the public came forth because they were very upset about the amount of traffic that exists and more traffic that would occur. So, so when the residents came forward with those feelings, so would that be an example of, we hear you, but it doesn't matter?
It depends on the case, and of course, I don't recall exactly how this particular one went down, and I don't want to comment on past decisions, but turning that into a hypothetical and, a similar type of situation. If you have residents who are coming in who are not affected parties, and they have comments about a particular development, that aren't evidentiary, then no, those should not be considered. And when it comes to, hey, there's a lot of traffic, this is just going to increase traffic, that is not a fact-based statement. It's not pegged to a study. It's not pegged to, something that really is competent, substantial evidence. It is conjecture. Now, on the other hand, if you have a resident who comes in and they're right next door to the development and they can point something out in the traffic study, they have their own traffic study, they have some sort of factual information to share, that needs to be considered because they are presenting evidence. But general public comments by those who are not affected, there aren't those affected parties that have some sort of interest in the proposed development greater than the general public. Most of the time, comments are just comments and not facts.
Well, in this particular case, the comments were made by the affected parties. They were within the 300-foot notice, is that right?
Two of them, I believe 2 of them were affected and the other 4 were not.
Yeah, so these folks are definitely affected by the issue. And then I believe the applicant came back with a traffic study
Yes.
that provide a little bit more information, insight about it. But based on the reading and the presentation that you gave us last time, it sounds like even if there's a traffic study, if we don't believe it, we don't have to accept it. Is that correct?
As the finder of fact, you have the ability to determine, draw conclusions based on the fact-based evidence that's presented to you. Now, what these affected parties in a decision similar to the one that you're talking about have the ability to do as well is cross-examine witnesses. So that means if a traffic study is presented, as opposed to simply stating, well, this is just going to increase traffic, which is just a conclusion without any, without proffering evidence. What these affected parties can do is they can cross-examine the expert. They can ask questions about the study, how it was produced, what the study says, and in doing so, present fact-based evidence to you through their questions, similar in a court where you have cross-examination. So they have that ability, and that you can consider as evidence.
Okay, so at the end of the day, it's up to us to make the decision who wins the argument, basically.
Yes.
Thank you. I have a question, and that was in your presentation last week, and you had just mentioned it again, is that an affected party is allowed to, you use the term, cross-examine the applicant on something they stated a fact. What would that look like? How do you just let them come back up and speak and go back and forth? How would you do that? Because in our forum, that would be difficult. They don't have there's one microphone, and we recognize one person, and we don't allow people to yell from the audience. So how would you do that back and forth?
About 10 years ago, when I advised this board, quite a while ago, there actually was an affected party determination at the beginning of the quasi-judicial hearings. And so the chair would ask, are there any individuals that want to be considered as affected parties? And at that point in time, they would have the ability to raise their hand and be identified. They would state the reasons as to why they believe they're an affected party. The board would make a determination, and then they have the ability to participate in the hearing. Now, to answer your question, sir, if they can't interrupt the applicant's presentation, but there would be a point in time during the hearing where they would have the ability to then say, I call so-and-so, or I have a question about this, more informally, because this isn't a super formal process like court. But they would say, hey, I heard the applicant's presentations. I have some questions for them. I want to ask them a few things. And this could be later on in the hearing. And then they could go through their cross-examination, so to speak. Now, that's not part of the city's process currently, and that's fine. There are other jurisdictions that don't have a formal quasi-judicial process like Apopka does, that goes through even the steps that you all do with the disclosures and everything at the beginning of the hearing. But at some point during the hearing, perhaps during public comment, someone would have to petition for that affected party status or make some sort of claim, I live close, I want to do these things. And when I say these things, I mean cross-examine, present evidence and make it clear that that's what their desire to do is. So public comment would probably be the most appropriate point in time where they could stand up and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I live next door, and I got some questions here. I really want to ask some things of the applicant. Or I have these documents I want to produce, and I want these to be considered in the hearing.
So that would, I mean, in the past, we usually will let if in a situation like the last one where you have, let's say we have 10 people there that are affected. And they come and they voice their concerns, and we usually let the applicant come back afterwards to reply.
Mm-hmm.
So he replies. Now, if there's something further than that, in that case, I'd say, well, would anyone from the public like to respond? Or would any of the affected parties like to respond and give them a chance to come back up? I mean, I know it could turn into a long ping pong match there, or do I just let the affected party that wants to speak come up and be at the microphone and they can just switch back and forth? I'm just trying to see the logistics of how that would happen. We've never really had anything like that I can recall.
Right. Typically, the burden, of course, is on the applicant to prove their case, so they generally have the last opportunity to speak. But I think it depends on how much of a pressing issue it is and what, what these individuals are trying to get across. And of course, affected parties typically, may not understand the process fully and understand their rights fully unless they're represented by counsel. So, what I would recommend to the board and to point to your question is just providing them the opportunity to participate, really satisfies that due process requirement, because they've had the ability to, ask questions, make their comments known to you. And most of the time what we hear from members of the general public is not evidentiary. It's just a matter of expressing opinion. But simply by presenting that opportunity to speak, that's satisfying those due process requirements. Now, if it's in the board's leisure to allow them to speak further for clarification after they've had one chance, if they're an affected party, then that's certainly up to the board. And kind of, I think where I'm going, sir, without the process that, really sets forth a very clear guideline for how it will be handled, you have discretion, is really what I'm getting to.
So we just have to do it kind of on a case-by-case basis.
In this case, the way that the code currently reads, yes, sir, that's an accurate statement.
Question?
Commissioner Washington, do you have another question? Go ahead.
I certainly understand where Commissioner Ryan is coming from, because folks tend to get emotional. And I can just see how if folks have an opportunity to question and there's rebuttal, et cetera, you got this give and take. And if you have multiple people here on the same issue, then it just compounds the whole thing. So I hope that never happens. I'm going to just ask another question, all right, if you will. The chairman always asks or announces this is a quasi-judicial decision. We know what that is. Thank you. Then the second question is, the chairman would say, has anyone had ex parte communications? And most of us say no. But I often wonder, what would happen if somebody said yes? What do you do then?
Excellent question. So the safe thing, the reason for asking for the disclosures is to provide an opportunity to make those disclosures. Because when this was all kind of drawn out by the courts in the 1980s, that's where this law came from, that essentially is behind the presentation that I gave you last month. And the idea is that, when you're sitting up here for a quasi-judicial hearing, very much like a judge, very much like a jury, right? And if, let's say there's a rezoning or something that's clearly quasi-judicial, if we have a commissioner, for instance, who, decides, well, I want to go check things out and make a site visit and talk to so-and-so, there's no bar against doing that. But what the court said back in the 1980s is, well, if you do that, it's presumed to be prejudicial. The reason it's presumed to be prejudicial is because the applicant and anybody else who may be interested in the matter, who has those due process rights, they don't know who you've talked to, who that individual has talked to. They don't know what's been said. And so if that individual is supposed to consider evidence, the problem is rather obvious, because the applicant can't ask questions about what this individual found out on the board, who's going to be making the decision that affects his application or her application. And so ultimately, what the ex parte disclosure process is designed to do is to provide all the members of the board the opportunity to make their disclosures, and then members of the public, the applicant and so forth, could ask questions. Oh, well, what did you find out? And sometimes those ex parte communications or an ex parte visit can create that it really depends, can create a problem. It usually does. That's why we recommend that officials, not have conversations outside, because it removes that potential for a problem. But at least if there's a disclosure, if there was a communication, it gives the applicant, it gives the affected parties, it gives those with those abilities to participate in the process the ability to ask questions about it and then clear it and get it on the record so that it's not something that's hidden away and we have evidence that's happening outside of the quote-unquote courtroom.
Good, thank you.
So I have a question in regards to that. I realize it wasn't quasi-judicial, but even this evening, the gentleman presented about the bee climbing, and, Commissioner Washington said, you were here 2 years ago. We wondered what happened. He happened to see the gentleman 14 months ago at Chick-fil-A and said to him, hey, whatever happened to your climbing thing? And they get into just a brief discussion. Is there some length of time that quasi-judicial covers or not?
It matters when there's a pending application. So if there's not an application, and I presume at the time, given the time frame and so forth, that there wasn't an application in with the city, that, that's just a matter of conversation. But if there's an application that is pending, then, that becomes, that's when it could be an issue.
By the way, that was, you were speaking hypothetically, but you're not?
Yes.
Okay.
Hypothetically. I was speaking
I don't want to be
hypothetically.
arrested getting out of here.
No.
No thanks, sir.
One thing that, and maybe you can clarify for this also, the ex parte is, like you said, so it's out in the open. I've discussed this with this gentleman, or we've had this discussion as an evidentiary thing. The other one, and I don't know how this is, in our code, I didn't see anything about it. In my past experience, I had a person that came up with an application that I had had a business relationship with for like 15 years. And their name wasn't on there, it was underneath the name of the engineering company. And when they came up, I was like, okay, stop, hold on a minute. And Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself. Now, what is that standard here at Apopka?
Well, that's by state law. So that goes to the code of ethics.
I've never seen anybody recuse themselves here in the city council ever. And I can't believe there's never been a situation where that would come up, because it happened to me twice.
That's a standard, and we can talk, since we have a few more presentations that staff has asked me to go through, and we can talk a bit about some of the ethics stuff. But that just depends upon standard, is there a special benefit to, it depends on the relationship. And we can talk a bit about that. But that's all governed specifically by state law. And so it would be the same for all officials elected. Well, sometimes there's a little bit of a difference between elected and appointed officials, but articulated within Chapter 112.
Yeah, I recused myself one time because I was the president of the HOA at Emerson Park.
I remember that.
And Park Square was building some townhomes, so obviously we had communications. And then they built the nursing home that I work for the agency that regulates that. So there was 2 times that I did have to
Right.
recuse myself
I
when
did, I
those things
recall
came
that.
up. So,
But I've never, that was, it's just, I had that on my mind. And here's the other thing that, and there's probably not a legitimate answer for this, but I always think about it. All right, city commission. City commission gets 10 people at one development company or one construction company or engineering company donates tons and tons of money to their campaign. And then 30 days later, they come up in front of them with a proposal, a rezoning proposal. How does that work? I know the answer to it is that's the way our system works, but it seems fundamentally wrong to me that if you came up, in other words, if I was sitting here and I've got contracts, I won't name any builders, but there's a lot of builders I have contracts with, and one of them came up here to apply, I would immediately say, hold on a minute, I need to recuse myself from this. I have a business relationship with them. And I would obviously be biased because with a business relationship, I've been friends with them for 20 years. I've had dinner with them and they're up here. Well, okay, I'm running, this is obviously not elected, but I'm running for office and somebody funnels $10,000 to me through a PAC or through their employees, and then they come to apply, I should immediately say, oh, hold up a minute. This guy, I have a relationship with him because that is fundamentally, to me, the same relationship a builder that spends $70,000 a year with me or donates $70,000 to my campaign. It's the exact same thing. And I never could get anybody to give an answer. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just threw it out there because maybe make these guys think about it because it drives me crazy and I've never come up with an answer. It just seems fundamentally wrong.
Again, that goes to Florida's ethics statutes, and there are very complicated statutes in dealing with lobbyists and how that situation works. I know that there are, and Cliff has done several of them for the League of Cities. There's a course that officials have to take each year that go over these topics in detail. Now, lobbyists have a tendency, it doesn't go over. They tend to focus on the voting conflicts and some of the things we were just talking about. But that's one of the topics that's covered, and it is an exhaustive topic. Topic. So as you as elected officials have to do some of the continuing education and so forth, certainly there's some information available there. And we can talk a bit more about that. It goes beyond the scope a little bit of this board since you all are appointed. Yeah, as far as the rules go, they're very fact-specific, very fact-driven into the relationships and, as our lobbying rules and so forth follow. So it's kind of
It's the catch-22. They're never going to pass a law saying they can't do it and nobody's ever going to donate to get somebody elected if they can't twist their arm and get something from them. So I get it. I guess I'm just being a jackass and bringing it up. All right, do we have any new business?
No, sir.
All right, seeing none, meeting adjourned.